you all for coming today. My sunshine order was fulfilled, so very pleased because obviously the sunshine brings people out. It's always amazing to be in a room filled with marketers, content marketers, people who work in advertising, our clients, our agency partners. It's nice to have everybody here. So as Jonathan pointed out, I'm here to talk about AI. So I'm one of these people who instinctively wants to dive into new technology as soon as it comes out. So what I'm going to talk about today is how I actually took a little bit of a different sort of tactic when it came to AI and AI implementation, and why I went that route and why the Globe and Mail as an organization kind of took the route that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm hoping that some of you will have some experience of your own that might be similar or different. I will take a couple of questions at the end if anybody wants to talk about that or ask me anything about it, but ultimately I want to walk everybody through the type of playbook that I'd been using when it came to AI, which of course was an incredibly dominating feature of all of our lives over the past couple of years. So where did we start? This is just a very quick refresher. Maybe you've forgotten the date, maybe not. But as we know, in late 2022, OpenAI dropped this bomb, right? Which is that it had this new technology that provided these detailed responses to human prompts or human questions. And it just sort of blew everybody's mind in terms of its capabilities and the possibilities, not just for people in marketing, but for industries basically across the board. Think of a sector, think of an industry that could have been impacted. Everybody sort of recognized that this was going to be something new and different. So what were some of the reactions, right? Like as creatives, we always thought we were immune to new technologies in terms of replacing our jobs. We thought, you know, humans need to be doing what we're doing. There's no other route possible. Like the robots can't take that over. They'll take like manufacturing jobs and other things. So what we learned was that wasn't the case anymore, right? Thanks to this bombshell. So what was the sort of first reaction for a lot of people? Panic, right? What's going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me long term in particular? And so of course, the first reaction for all of us at that point was, how do we work with this technology and figure out the ways to continue to make ourselves valuable as we go? So what did the Globe and Mail do as an organization? The first thing that happened is that we launched what we called our AI Council. So May 2023, a few months after that bombshell, right? Because we kind of needed to figure out, like, what does this thing actually look like? What are we going to do in terms of trying this thing out to see what it's capable of and what it's going to mean for our business? And then we need to get a group of people together from across the organization to sort of figure out what our response is going to be and what our approach, first and foremost, is going to be when it comes to deploying the technology. So what did we talk about? We had to talk about legal implications, right? What are the things that we need to figure out that may put us into hot water as a company, and be mindful of that and be careful around it? We had to think about ethics, right? We're a journalism-based organization. Our whole foundation is trust and ethics. If we break either of those two things, and in particular both of them, the entire business is in peril. So we had to think about which resources made the most sense, which tools made the most sense for us to start trying from those early days. And then, of course, we also had to think from a public-facing perspective, because we are a content company, right? Every day we are publishing content online for everybody to see. So we felt like we needed to communicate to the outside world what our approach to AI was going to be going forward, so that we could inherently keep that trust with our audience and make sure that they understood that what they were seeing was not going to be changed by the course of AI. So by mid-2024, so middle of last year, is when I feel like the hype cycle had peaked, right? Where everyone was out there rushing to either try things or not try things, maybe putting their heads in the sand potentially, still being panicked about it, as I'd mentioned earlier. But I felt like this was sort of the turning point where people were just starting to either use AI or at least test AI, and that panic phase had sort of subsided. Because we didn't see huge job losses, at least not across our sector or our industry. But what we were seeing was a lot of people trying it out to figure out how they could use it. So some of the key tasks that I've noticed that people have been starting to use since that period are in writing, right? Helping with writing. You know, you think about ChatGPT as an example of that, obviously. Doing research. So for a lot of the people on my team, including myself, I'll often use AI in ways that I would normally have used Google because it speeds up that research process. And then, of course, administrative tasks. As my team knows, the thing that I hate the most about my job is doing anything admin related. And I think we all feel that way. So what are the things, the functions that we do on a repetitive way that we can sort of replace through AI? We're seeing a lot of that. And then, of course, chatbots, right? Customer service chatbots. So for me, step one when it comes to AI and learning how to use AI is communicating effectively through prompts. You know, we actually thought about having sort of a prompt-based session, but we also realized probably a lot of people are already learning on their own what works effectively through prompts. But that is really your step in terms of your beginnings if you haven't quite gotten there yet. So what do you want to do with it? You want to train AI to use your voice, like I talked about writing. You want that writing to feel like it's your writing, not the AI-based writing. So through prompts, you want to train the AI to speak in your voice to help you out, or your brand's voice, if that's, you know, kind of standardized across all of your platforms. And then, of course, where we use it a lot is speeding up ideation. That's that research piece of it, but also enhancing your creative, getting things done that actually like surface ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of yourself, or reminding you of things maybe that you've done in the past, depending on how you're training the AI to help you with future communications and future kind of creative concepts, whether that be through illustrations or mood boards or video or whatever you're using the tools for. So what are the things that we had to figure out as we were going? There was a push and pull between falling behind and protecting the brand, that important piece that I'd mentioned earlier. So as I talked about, my instincts were to push, right? Let's get into AI as fast as possible is the way that I personally like to approach new technologies. But at the same time, we had a brand to protect, as I'd mentioned. So how do you figure out the middle ground between those two things to put you in a space where you're comfortable using the technology, especially in a live environment, but you're also making sure it's not affecting the ways in which the outside world interacts with your brand and feels about your brand and trusts your brand. So again, I'll mention that legal and ethical issues are paramount, right? Trust for the Globe and Mail was paramount. So that actually ended up slowing our process down, fighting my instincts and putting us into a place where we felt comfortable with the way we were moving forward with AI. You don't want to ignore AI, and you also don't want to rush into it. So for us, it was what is the slow and measured approach that we can take to achieve our goals while still protecting that brand. And then, of course, mistakes, as they always do, can provide you with some cautionary tales, some things that you may want to think about and be aware of so that you don't end up, you know, getting into a position where you're making similar mistakes. So these are all publicly available. You can Google them or ask one of your AI assistants to find them for you. But I've got 3 examples that I find are really good kind of case studies around some of the challenges that some brands have faced around AI. So Air Canada had a virtual assistant. So I mentioned chatbots. They had basically what was like an AI chatbot that was answering questions on behalf of some of the customers, right? So there was a passenger who had lost a grandparent, and they wanted to take advantage of the bereavement fare that Air Canada offers. So they asked the chatbot, you know, can I buy my ticket and then retroactively ask for the bereavement fare discount once I've already bought the ticket? The chatbot said, yes, you can go ahead and reimburse it retroactively. Unfortunately, Air Canada's actual policy was that you had to pre-apply before you booked the ticket in order to get the bereavement fare. So that customer didn't get their money back. So they actually took Air Canada to small claims court, and they won the case because the courts determined that the AI represents Air Canada. And even if there were links within the responses that took you to the actual policy, the fact is if the chatbot says something, that's basically like Air Canada saying something, and they end up getting their money back. So a good lesson for Air Canada and for all of us. Apple Intelligence is this tool that Apple had created that summarized a lot of the news alerts that it was sending out on behalf of some of its clients, like BBC News as an example. So around the time of the Luigi Mangione shootings, which you'll all recall was the United Health CEO that had been shot, allegedly by this individual, So 3 news alerts went out through Apple Intelligence, so summaries of the news that were done on behalf of BBC News. And one of the alerts actually said Luigi Mangione shoots himself, which of course is not true. He is currently in custody and undergoing the process of his trial. So the BBC actually filed a complaint and said, listen, like, you're acting on behalf of our brand here, right? We're one of those trusted news brands that I had referenced. And you may want to think about your use of this tool because it's actually spitting out incorrect information with our branding next to it. So in January 2025, so of this year, Apple actually disabled the feature on its news and entertainment apps because it recognized that it wasn't quite ready for prime time. Okay, so how many of you have heard of Bordy? It's a brand new startup. A couple of you are maybe using it? Okay, so I'll explain it then very briefly. So what Bordy does is help you facilitate networking through the LinkedIn platform. So it actually deploys bots to go out and try to find people that it thinks match up well with you and that you should network with. So it also will send out automated emails to the customer base on occasion to inform them of new features, and it'll speak in its Bordy voice, right, and inform you of things that you may want to know as a customer. So what the company did at one point when Donald Trump was first reelected and came back into the White House in late January is it tried to train the bot to put out automated emails to the customer base in the voice of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, it drew on the LinkedIn photos that were part of those accounts. And in the case of women, it was actually commenting on the appearances of the women through their photos that were on LinkedIn. But for men, for the most part, it was talking mostly about their attributes in their LinkedIn profiles. So needless to say, and the reason I was alerted to this is because I saw a lot of really pissed off women posting on their LinkedIn feeds how upset they were for receiving this and like showing screenshots of their letters. And obviously the company got in some fairly hot water as a result of this. The CEO actually went on to LinkedIn and apologized and owned the mistake and said this is something that we've learned and that we obviously won't be doing again. So what does that all mean for the Globe and Mail? So what I want to do is talk a little bit about why, as a result of things like those case studies, we've taken this slow, measured approach to our own uses of AI. So publicly, we now have what we're calling a climate bot in market. So in kind of early 2024, we had a client come to us and said that they were interested in working with us on a feature that would provide our audience the opportunity to ask questions about climate, and Globe and Mail journalists would provide the answers. And so what we determined was that this was a good opportunity for us to use AI to kind of help match some reader questions with some answers that were being facilitated by the Globe and Mail's newsroom. So in about mid-2024, we developed what we were calling the climate bot. And so it is now live on the site. And what we've done is collected stories or collected questions, and then the bot will automatically funnel those questions into a Google Doc. The newsroom can go in, look at the questions, cherry pick the ones that it thinks are most interesting, surface those answers on the website, and the bot is now matching very specifically any questions that are close enough to answers that it can provide the answers to questions that are now being asked of our audience. So really only drawing from the corpus of answers that were related to very specific questions. But what we're now doing is moving into what we're calling phase 2. And so that's what's currently in development as like the next iteration of our climate bot. So not live yet, but this is what we're testing and trying currently. So what's the path? So a reader submits a question, like they've always been able to do. And then the QA bot first tries to match it to the answers that I mentioned that are already part of phase 1. And then the part that we're going to be bolting on is that if there's no luck in terms of that matchup, we now have a corpus of hundreds of Globe and Mail climate stories, that were written for general consumption on our website, that the bot will now be looking to try to create AI-generated responses, so like an overview of the question as it matches up to one of those stories, and then providing a link that sources where that response came from so that people can go to that Globe and Mail story and check out the fuller version if they want to see more than just the AI-based overview. So why is this not yet in market? Because we're still in the test and try phase, because as I talked about, that trust piece is important. And until we as a Globe and Mail organization are comfortable with this technology, we will not be moving into phase 2. So that's the point at which we're being extremely careful. That's the slow, methodical approach that I've been referring to. So extensive testing, in our opinion, is required just to move from that step of going from choosing an answer that's been generated to actually like going into that corpus of those hundreds of stories and providing that AI overview. It's enough of a leap that we still feel that extensive testing is going to be necessary. So why? There's always the potential for defamation, right? If that AI overview gets something incorrect. How many of you know about hallucinations, AI hallucinations? Okay, quite a few. Hallucinations are basically like untruths, stuff that are made up by the AI bots. So Luigi Mangione shoots himself as an example of a hallucination, where you're piecing together a bunch of words and coming up with what you think is a fact, but actually isn't. So that's something that we have to be mindful of. So we're testing it to make sure that it's not hallucinating. And then obviously, as part of that, we need to make sure that the answers are accurate, not incorrect, right? So what we're doing now is having actual humans, me, my team, people in the newsroom, other people across the organization, actually checking and recording the relevance and the accuracy of the answers as we punch in questions, basically trying to break the AI to see whether or not it's going to be ready for prime time. So will it be ready for prime time? Only time will tell once that testing is complete. But we're also thinking about what some of the future applications for this type of technology could be, right? So AI-powered enhanced site search, right? So taking the sort of concept of phase 2 and extending it out to broader searches across the entire Globe and Mail sort of newsroom and editorial platform. Personalization, right? Being able to like ask to have your feed curated while also making sure we're still keeping newsroom curation as part of that experience, because part of our job is to inform Canadians, right? And make sure they're being exposed to the news that we feel is important to them. So blending those two things together will remain extremely important to us. So it's not just about personalization alone. And then potentially AI-powered human-reviewed story formats for time-pressed readers. So maybe having the ability to ask to have a story that's in a text form, offered up to you in the form of like a video or an audio or a podcast, for example. And then, of course, product recommendations, because we have things like tools and newsletters and podcasts that are kind of spread across the site, not always easy for people to find, and maybe an opportunity for us to deploy AI to make it easier for people to have a pathway to finding those things. So what's the Globe Content Studio doing? We are working now on using a number of different platforms to generate images on demand through those prompts I talked about, to potentially create and manipulate video, or some of the tests that are ongoing within the studio. But our overarching aim for all of these things is time and cost savings, right? So again, not removing the humans from the process, but figuring out how to save us time and save us money while still blending in the human curation and creativity that's important. So right now, we are only using AI tools internally. Nothing is actually going live for reasons that I'll talk a little bit about. So in the short term, when it comes to images, where we feel we can make the first sort of set of, kind of time and cost savings is through mood boards for our pitch decks, right? So seen by clients in their pitch decks as a way to like save us the time of having to sort of search around the internet for things that look like the kind of design elements that we're trying to achieve, and then using prompts to speed that process up, and then saving us money, because of course time is money in our case, right? And so only seen by the client or agency that we're actually pitching. On the video side, one place where we feel like there's going to be some good use cases is taking illustrations, so again, that we are getting done by humans, but adding motion to them, again, as a way to save time and money. We feel like that could be an early application for us. Our number one rule in the studio is do not feed the beasts, okay? So what that means is we do not put any original material into any AI platforms. We do not provide them the opportunity to take that material and use it in a situation where we might be, violating trademark or copyright, especially if we're using like freelance material, so non-Globe and Mail individuals to create that material on our behalf. So for now, all of the tools that we're only using the current corpus of those tools as opposed to putting any of our own original material into them. Have any of you tried to make the action figure of yourselves through AI? Yeah? Okay, we have one up front here. How did you look?
Funny.
Thumbs up, thumbs down? Funny, yeah. So I call this my denim alien look is how I described it. But you can see the prompt that was used. And this was the result. I think my face looks kind of weird. But the reason I'm showing this is it just goes to show you, because this was done in like, 1 minute, like literally. But it is amazing like how much you can do really quickly and really actually quite effectively. We're starting to look less and less like aliens and more like, like sort of real people. But the first question that came from the designer that did this for me is, are you okay with me inputting your face into the AI program before I do this? So a very important question to have asked. My face is all over the internet already, so I didn't really care that much. Okay, just going to show you a couple of really quick examples. Prompt and photo. Obviously, we have a lot of automotive-based clients, so here's an example of the kind of thing that we might be able to use in a mood board, for example, and the prompt that accompanied it. Another prompt and an example. So I talked about, I think briefly in one of my slides, although maybe I didn't speak to it, another thing that we're looking at is using AI programs for storyboarding. Again, another way to save a lot of time and money. So here's an example of a storyboard that we had created with this prompt. And then I talked about adding motion to illustration. So this was an illustration, and the prompt was, zoom in and turn it from like daytime to nighttime. So add illustration to this, but also add some effects to it as well. So just a couple of ways in which we're starting to sort of test and try on the AI side. So in our creative studio, which creates a lot of the brand ads, including the content drivers that help throw to our content, they're starting to test some generative AI visuals for client work. So this, again, would be a case where, is there a platform where we can draw from some already licensed content, and there are some providers that have that already, where we can create some images for some of the brand ads that we might be using on behalf of clients. The most important thing in that case right now is using the phrase AI-generated images for transparency so that you will never see, even in a brand ad, anything on the Globe and Mail's site where we are not completely transparent that AI was used in the development. So as we're testing, our prompts get better, right? And then the results get better as your prompts get better. So I talked about using images to create things like brand ads, but we might also extend that to some of the sponsor content work, so some of the actual content marketing, the stories themselves that maybe we'll be able to start illustrating at some point soon using AI tools, and then the video storyboards I mentioned. Those are future cases. We have not actually started doing any of that yet, but that's the way our sort of thinking is going currently. It's also worth keeping in mind that a lot of these programs can work together, right? So you might use an image generator to help feed your video generator. So again, that adding sort of motion to illustrations piece. And then also you can use some AI chatbots to help improve your prompts, right? Say, hey, I'm not thrilled with the results I'm getting from this prompt. Can you maybe suggest some ways that I can improve it in order to get a better result than what I'm getting currently? So using the AI to help you with other AI. So the guardrails being a really important piece here, right? So fact-checking everything, just to sort of round up what I'd mentioned earlier, being aware of hallucinations and the fact they can happen, being transparent is a way to help mitigate that issue, and then, of course, being transparent and using that language anytime AI might have played a role in any piece of the development around any of the content that you're putting out in the world. So you also want to put your brand first. Don't rush. Like, to me, this is the key message for all of this, right? All of us as marketers and advertisers, we all want to rush. You guys are like me. You want to get as quickly to market with new things because it makes you look good in front of your clients and in front of others, right? Bear in mind some of those case studies. So you want to do a thorough analysis of all the relevant and related risks to any of the work you're doing with AI. And you want to think about people in your organization that are part of that process as being helpers, not barriers to putting the work in market, right? So for the Globe and Mail's working group, we had people from legal, from IT, from UX, from our dev team, HR, marketing, communications. You may not all have those functions internally, but if you don't, you may want to consider bringing external people with those functions into your discussions around AI, because it's going to be really important to have those people at your table. And when they give you reasons not to put something in market or not to hurry around AI, listen to them. Don't think about them getting in your way. Think about them protecting you and protecting your brand. And then use living documents to set out dynamic living guidelines for your staff. So for example, something that lives in the cloud that lays out your rules around AI use or not use, and then making sure that you can change those rules as the AI technology develops and as your organization develops and gets closer to putting things in market, so that those things can change as much as they need to, because we live in a world now of constant change, AI changing all the time, and the rules for us around its deployment are going to need to change as well.